Acadiana, welcome to Local News Live, a production of AOC Community Media in partnership with the Acadiana Advocate. And the Advocate, the larger news organization that is covering Lafayette, Louisiana, and all of Louisiana in especially this very important news time right now as we are rolling into the 2020 election. It's happening tomorrow. If you haven't been out to vote already, we want to remind you to make sure you have a plan for tomorrow. Plan includes masks, transportation, snacks, water, because you may be waiting in line for a while, but we all know it's worth it to have your voice heard. And if nothing else, then for the right to complain for the next 2 or 4 years while you deal with your the choices and the outcomes of this election. We're glad to bring you this public service, reading you the news every Monday through Friday between 9 a.m. and 10 a.m., and we could not do it, of course, without the generous volunteer efforts of our newsreaders, people like Mr. Bruce Cohen, who is here with us this morning in spite of his spam filter's best efforts to keep us apart. Good morning, Bruce.
Well, I concur with all of your voter one for the Gipper speech. I concur. And hey, listen, it is our duty as Americans to get out there and vote. If you already haven't, get out there and vote. That's your as an American citizen over 18, you have a right. So don't deny that right. Go out there and make changes happen, however you vote. So I concur.
Well, thank you for that, Bruce. We all agree here. You guys get out there, rock the vote, and this morning I'm going to let Bruce rock the news and listen on Cypress Street. Thanks, Bruce.
Well, thanks so much, Matt. Yes, my friendly community listeners, it is Local News Live, November 2nd, 2020. And we'll start off with some local news. And obviously, in accordance with tomorrow's very special day, young first-time poll workers stepping up by Katie Gagliano, staff writer. Young and first-time election commissioners are stepping up to staff local polling locations Tuesday as national campaigns encourage electoral involvement beyond voting, and concerns linger about older commissioners' safety during the coronavirus pandemic. National election commissioners typically skew older. In the 2016 presidential election, data collected by the U.S. Election Assistance Commission showed that 56% of poll workers were 60 or older, and 18% were 40 or younger, based on data provided by states. Lafayette Clerk Court Louis Perret, who's administered elections in Lafayette Parish for 20 years, and Lafayette follows that trend, estimating people 65 and older make up over 50% of commissioners. That's changing this year. There's been an obvious increase in younger applicants registering and attending commissioner classes ahead of Tuesday, he said. Firm numbers weren't available, but Perret said he's confident the demographics of the poll workers this election have shifted. I think it's a general awakening on public service, Perret said. I firmly believe in my heart that the more people who participate in our representative democracy, the better off we are, because it helps steer the country in what kind of leadership we need. It's very important for the next generation to step up to help out. That's the idea of America, being considerate of your neighbor and helping your neighbor, he said. Lafayette will have roughly 900 election commissioners working Tuesday, Perret said. Having a strong base of commissioners is always critical to smooth elections, but there's added importance this year because of additional safety measures being taken at the polls, he said. The bump for interest for younger people in working on election day has been helpful because some older commissioners are sitting this year out because of the pandemic, Perret said. Data on the current demographics of registered election commissioners statewide was not immediately available from the Louisiana Secretary of State's office as staff workers to assess polling sites damaged or without power after Hurricane Zeta before Election Day, spokesperson Tyler Bray said. Carly Shikani Matthews, an 18-year-old Lafayette resident, is one of the young and first-time election commissioners stepping up this election cycle. The 2020 St. Thomas More Catholic High School graduate said she got the idea to work on Election Day while watching a 2020 graduation special on TV over the summer. The national nonpartisan initiative Power the Polls was rallying recent graduates to apply as poll workers, and Shakani Matthews' mother encouraged her to give it a shot. The 18-year-old researched poll working and then applied through the Louisiana Secretary of State's office website before taking an exam and attending a class with Perret's office. In October, she received an email assigning her to work at the Commonwealth Recreation Center. I felt like personally voting wasn't enough. Voting was awesome, making my voice heard, but this was something I could do for the community to be part of Election Day and helping other people have their voice be heard. I think it's just as important as civic duty voting, and you need people to work the polls to help with that, Shakani Matthews said. Working as an election commissioner is also a way to contribute that's nonpartisan. Shakani Matthews says she's been unsettled by how divisive and ugly opinions and behavior around the election have become, even among friends and acquaintances. Some of that negativity has been balanced by general positive messaging around voting. Shakani Matthews says she feels like there's greater outspokenness about the importance of voting, and she's seen heavy social media activity encouraging voting education and enthusiasm around voting. The 18-year-old didn't want that energy from young people to live online only. I remember going with my parents to vote in 2016 and seeing older people as poll workers, and that's typically the norm. I think there's something to be said about being a fresh 18-year-old. This is my first presidential election, and I'm at my polling location, and one of the workers at the polling location is 18 or in their 20s. It would give me a sense of how important this election is and just to be a part of it in whatever way you can be, she said. Fred Slyman, spokesperson for the East Baton Rouge Parish Clerk of Court, said they're seeing similar enthusiasm from younger people. Around 500 new election commissioners have registered in the last 2 months, he said, including a nice number of college students and some high school seniors. The communications I've had are just that they're ready to jump in and help. They've been very eager. It's just really a unified desire to help and help the system is what I've gotten from them, he said. The large influx of younger people follows several years of lagging interest from poll workers under 40, despite recruitment efforts. Slyman said the surge makes him confident that even beyond the presidential election, they'll continue to see higher numbers of younger election commissioners as registered workers spread the word to friends. Kelsey Grimillion, 30, is taking a day off as a human resource manager to work the polls on Election Day in Baton Rouge. The 30-year-old says she has no family history of working elections and doesn't know any friends who've answered the call. Grimillion says she was spurred by social media posts from former CNN journalist Jessica Yellen, who shared information about National Election Commissioner registration drives. Grimillion sent in an application online and began the process. Originally chosen as an alternate commissioner, she'll now be working Tuesday after another commissioner had to back out. Slyman said East Baton Rouge Parish will have roughly 1,700 commissioners working Tuesday. Grimillion says she'll be broadcasting her Election Day enthusiasm through a voting-themed t-shirt while working the polls. The Baton Rouge native earned a government studies minor in college and says she's always been cognizant, that's a tough one, cognizant, this early in the morning anyways, cognizant of the importance of voting to fulfill the country's vision of a representative democracy. This year, she felt a calling to be a cog in the machine that helps make that vision happen, especially as concerns rise about voter intimidation and troubles at the polls. If elections aren't administered fairly and judiciously, then there's lots of room for error. That's a big weakness within our political process, she said. And on a personal note, I have been an election commissioner in the state of Louisiana for years and years. And in California, I worked as a commissioner and a commissioner in charge. So I do know that traditionally it is the retirees or older individuals who run the polls. So it's really good to see that some younger folks are wanting to take active in the political process. It's very, very important that our polls, especially this year, run smoothly and without much of an issue. I was involved in the first Obama election, and that was that there were lines out the door for hours. So as a poll commissioner, you have to just really be locked in and make sure that everything is running smoothly. So good luck, Carly, and everybody else who's participating. We appreciate your help. So let's go on to other news happening in our area today. I certainly hope that this happens. Let's see. Guillory, no talks to sell Hyman Center. Mayor President says new facility would be needed by Claire Taylor, staff writer. Lafayette Mayor President Josh Guillory's spokesman said Thursday the city is not in active talks to sell the Hyman Performing Arts Center, and any sale would be contingent upon construction of a new performance facility that would not require operating subsidies from the city. Guillory, in a news release Thursday, said he has been approached in recent months by Lafayette General and the University of Louisiana at Lafayette about the Hyman Center, which sits on 7 acres next to the hospital on South College Road on the outskirts of Lafayette's Oil Center. In my view, my personal agreement would have to include a plan for building a new performing arts center for our city that creates no additional burden on taxpayers and includes mechanisms to operate without a general fund subsidy, he said in the news release. Guillory cut funding to the Hyman Center this summer, laying off several employees. He cited a fall in revenue due to the coronavirus pandemic and forced business closures. His budget also cut funds to the Lafayette Science Museum and Acadiana Nature Station. Guillory has referred to such amenities as extras and said government should focus on funding roads, drainage, police, and fire protection. Jimmy Angel, Chief Communications Officer, said in September and again Thursday, the city is not in active discussions to sell the Hyman Center, which was built in 1960 and includes a theater and ballroom. That's why the news release was issued. Angel said there has been chatter among different groups about a possible sale of the Hyman Center. We're not in conversations to sell it, Angel said. We're only saying there would have to be a replacement. In September, emails obtained through a public records request revealed Lafayette Consolidated Government, or LCG, assisted Lafayette General Health in appraising the value on the Hyman Center. Lafayette General can't move the hospital, Angel said. This is the only piece of real estate they can expand to, with the Ochsner Health buying them out. There might be some consideration. Several years ago, he said UL unveiled a master plan that included a performing arts facility across from Cajun Field. Angel stressed, however, the city won't sell the Hyman Center and leave the city without a venue for theater and musical performances, dance recitals, and Mardi Gras balls. A new center, Guillory said in the news release, also said should also meet the needs of the Lafayette Parish School System and UL. I look forward to working with the members of the City Council, local stakeholders, and a legislative delegation to thoroughly explore the issues surrounding the status of the Hyman and the best, most efficient path to fulfill Lafayette's performing arts needs now and in the future, Guillory said in the news release. We will have a quality performing arts facility here in Lafayette, whether we decide to work with the legislature for funding to improve the Hyman or embark on a path to a new facility. Okay, we'll go to a couple of public service announcements, usually at the close to the 15-minute mark in the broadcast. We read a couple of PSAs, or public service announcement. The first one is for the Festival of Words, which is our annual literary festival here in the St. Landry Parish and Acadian Parish area. Every first weekend in November is when the Festival of Words happens. And this year, along with everything else, like a Festival Acadiana Creole and Festival International de Louisiana, is virtual. So the Festival of Words celebrates another year with 3 amazing authors and 2 days of memorable events. The festival will take place Friday and Saturday, November 6th and 7th, virtually. That's this week. This year includes nationally recognized authors, Louisiana Poet Laureate John Warner Smith, poet Erica Mittner, and graphic memorist Robin Ha. Festival events include creative writing workshops for students in the community, a community stage for open mic, and drive-by poetry in which youth give dramatic presentations of festival authors' writings. The Friday night event features a poetry presentation by John Warren Smith, and Erica Mittner and Robin Ha reads from her work, graphic memoir, Almost American Girl. On Saturday, drive-by poetry performance from the Magnet Academy of Cultural Arts, and also some high school students from the Lafayette area will recite works by the featured authors. There will be an open mic and multiple creative writing workshops, which are open to the public. For all the information, check out Festival of Words, that's all in lowercase all together, festivalofwords.org, and go to the festival page, pull down that tab, and go to whatever information you want. All the various links to all the different Zoom cafes for the different events will be listed on the Facebook page and at the website. Also on the Facebook page, you can go to Festival Words Arts Collective or just Festival Words to find our Facebook page. And I say R because, as a full disclosure, I am on the board of Festival Words and very involved. And I am the coordinator for the drive-by poetry performances. So please check it out. It's an incredible event, and especially incredible that we are able to get our high schools and middle school students involved in a very important aspect of the arts and of life. A Dream celebrates National Disabilities Month on Halloween. So I guess that's already happened. Let's see. Yeah, it was this past Saturday. So we'll delete that as we go through. Sometimes PSAs hang in there. So we'll delete that because that's already passed. But what is continuing is a request for mosquito control now available through Lafayette, 311 Mosquito Prevention and Safety. The Lafayette Consolidated Government is increasing mosquito abatement efforts in the parish. An increase in mosquito activity is a common occurrence following a storm events such as the last three major events we've had that impacted the Gulf states, Gulf Coast states. Citizens noticing an influx of mosquitoes in the area can now use the Lafayette 311 portal to request service. All submitted requests are routed directly to Mosquito Control Services, the mosquito control contractor for the parish. Okay, we're moving on back to our news stories. Cajun custom hat maker opening. Man moves from New Orleans to downtown Lafayette by Julia Gilbo, staff writer. Walking into the Cajun Hatter custom-made hat shop, it is easy to see Cajun culture at the forefront. From the maroon divider in the style of an Acadian home to the cypress and moss accents, Acadian style surrounds the small downtown Lafayette shop. For Colby Hebert, owner of the Cajun Hatter, hat making has always been directly impacted by his Cajun culture. Relocating from his office on Magazine Street in New Orleans back to Lafayette, the New Iberia native said he needed to return to the area to be back in Cajun country. He will open his store this Friday. In New Orleans, I was working so hard and in so many ways, not only to help with Cajun preservation, but also just to step into that Cajun identity that I have in every way, Colby Hebert said. It was at this point where I'm like, I can't do this anymore and not be here in my culture and directly contributing to my culture. We have a great thing here, and that a lot of people argue is dying out. Being here in that pivotal moment where we start to decide how we want to redefine culture here makes me feel good. Hebert first got interested in hats when he was younger and wanted to try his hand at something bold and different in fashion. He started collecting hats and noticed the finer details involved in each one, and that naturally led to custom hat making. His previous experience in the film industry as a costume designer also helped. He was able to see fashion from a maker's perspective. After his time in the film industry, he opened a hat shop in New Iberia before picking up and moving to New Orleans. He makes hats almost all by hand, using mainly wooden tools and traditional techniques that have been in use for decades. His only real machinery, he noted, are his steamer and iron. His hat prices start at $400, and Hebert points out that covers the high quality of the material and the personalization of the product. He uses a felt beaver fur, or more recently, felt nutria fur. The felt itself, he noted, is such quality that it will likely outlive its user. And nutria, he noted, are an overpopulated species in Louisiana that contributes to coastal erosion. Making use of their fur creates less waste. You want to make something that is sustainable, lasting, and not something that is going to be material consumer waste, Hebert said. They, the customers, have chosen a type of fur that creates such a high quality felt that it might outlive you. It might outlive your children. Designing a hat is a personal experience for every client, he said, that often begins with a consultation. The design process can include details such as hair color, physique, or a person's color palette. His clientele can range from teenagers to 80 years old, but he gets more customers in their 30s and 40s and more women than men. So congratulations to Kobe Hebert for opening up a unique shop that will continue to increase the availability of people going to the downtown area and to increase the diversity of the stores and restaurants that are now open on Jefferson Street. So good luck to Mr. Kobe Hebert for opening up his hat shop, and hopefully business, and once we get through this pandemic, hopefully business will be good for him. We'll give him all the best. Okay, so it's now 9:21. Let me read a state story, and then we'll go into the day in history, the zodiac or horoscope, and the funerals in the Acadiana area for the day. Election 2020 U.S. Senate. Toned down U.S. Senate campaign comes to close. Candidates make final bids during quiet visits by Tyler Bridges, staff writer. Louisiana's low-key U.S. Senate election is winding up, with two main candidates making their final pitches during low-key visits in different parts of the state. U.S. Senator Bill Cassidy, a Republican, and Shreveport Mayor Adrian Perkins, his main Democratic challenger, campaigned to little notice on a final weekend that in past years may have brought a flock of TV cameras and reporters to their events. The biggest question remaining is this: can Cassidy win a second term on Tuesday in a 15-candidate field by capturing more than 50% of the vote, or will he be forced into a December 5th runoff with Perkins? Democrats are hopeful about extending the race by another month because they churned out more of their voters during the early voting period than in past elections. But Roy Fletcher, a veteran Louisiana political consultant, said he believes Republicans will offset that advantage on Tuesday. I think you'll see that a lot of people who didn't vote early will vote on election day, Fletcher said Sunday. That will help Cassidy defeat Mr. 50 because that's who he's running against, Mr. 50, a reference to Cassidy's threshold for victory. Mary Patricia Ray, a political consultant and lobbyist, said one reason for the subdued nature of the Senate race is that the emotional hard-fought contest for the White House is sucking all the air out of the room. It's hard to get earned media that's meaningful and informative, unrelated to the presidential race, Ray said, which is pitting President Donald Trump against former Vice President Joe Biden. Both the Cassidy and the Perkins campaigns are gearing up their get out the vote efforts. The Louisiana Republican Party has provided 200 plus volunteers to the Cassidy campaign to work phone banks and serve as poll watchers, said Brittany Reed, the party's executive director. Louisiana Democratic Party is doing a lot of phone banking, texting, and canvassing around the state, said Katie Bernhardt, the party chairwoman. We're doing it with guidelines to protect the health of everyone involved. Secretary of State's office is projecting an overall turnout of 69% to 71%, up from 67.8% in 2016, while pollster and demographer John Cuvion is expecting a 73% turnout this year. Donald Trump is the main driver for turnout, said State Representative Kyle Green Jr., Democrat from Marrero. He excites his base, but he also excites Democrats as well. excites, not excites, whatever. Amendment 1, which would enshrine the state's anti-abortion laws in the state constitution, and Amendment 5, which would give additional tax giveaways to manufacturing companies, are also expected to push up turnout. East Baton Rouge Parish, the state's most populous parish, has a contested race with Mayor President Sharon Weston Broome running for re-election, while Orleans Parish, ranked third in population, has a competitive campaign for an open district attorney seat. Another race that should turn out voters is to replace U.S. Representative Ralph Abraham, a Republican in a mostly rural district that includes northeast Louisiana and Alexandria. Besides being overshadowed by the presidential contest, the Senate election has attracted little public attention, in part because the coronavirus has discouraged traditional campaigning, and in part because Cassidy has followed a cautious front-runner strategy of not engaging with Perkins and minimizing his contact with reporters. Cassidy has ducked debates and avoided standing campaign forums with Perkins and the 2 or 3 other candidates who actually have been campaigning. The Cassidy campaign has reached voters mostly through a TV ad campaign that has blanketed the airwaves. The latest campaign filing shows that through October 14th, Cassidy has collected $10.9 million compared with $1.7 million for Perkins, who didn't get into the race until late July. Cassidy made himself available to reporters for 15 minutes on Saturday after receiving a briefing at the Jefferson Parish Emergency Operations Center in Gretna on the recovery effort from Hurricane Zeta. No reporters showed up. Cassidy toured Lafayette afterwards with Ricky Template, a Jefferson Parish at-large council member, and the 2 joined volunteers in handing out food, ice, and water to residents who remained without power. On Sunday, Cassidy made himself available to reporters once after attending the morning service at First Bossier Church in Bossier City, a popular spot for conservative candidates. One local TV station covered the visit. On Monday, Cassidy will hold a meet and greet event in Hammond, Mandeville, Kenner, and Thibodaux. Meanwhile, Perkins on Saturday went door to door with the Voice of the Experienced, a nonprofit in Baton Rouge, and met with students supporting him in New Orleans. On Sunday, Perkins met with supporters in New Orleans and Donaldsonville. None of the events generated media coverage. Perkins will stop in New Iberia, Lafayette, and Opelousas on Monday. Cassidy did not make himself available for an interview for the story. He mailed a statement instead. It said, "For 6 years, I have worked for the people of Louisiana for real solutions to real problems. My legislation, which has been signed into law, has helped create more jobs, lower the cost of prescription drugs, address issues of mental health and veteran suicide, opiate addiction, and secured vital resources for our state to combat COVID-19. In an interview, Perkins said he is emphasizing to voters that we're in the middle of a public health crisis. We're in the middle of an economic crisis. Senator Cassidy has failed us. He failed to point out the severity of the crisis and provide the resources to get through it and the economic crisis. He's turned his back on the working class families, the small business, and the municipalities that make Louisiana strong. Tuesday gives us an opportunity to send Senator Cassidy a message that we deserve better, and that we deserve better, and that we will get a stronger leader in Washington who will look after our interests, not those of the wealthy or the well-connected and corporations." All right, it's about almost that half-hour mark, so we will go to our day in history. Today is Monday, November 2nd, the 307th day of 2020. There are potentially 59 shopping days left in the year. Of course, depending on how tomorrow turns out, or how the election turns out, which we may not know the results for a couple of days. Hopefully, the majority of the votes will get in by late tomorrow. On November 2nd, 1976, former Governor Jimmy Carter became the first candidate from the Deep South since the Civil War to be elected president, as he defeated incumbent Gerald R. Ford. On this date in 1783, General George Washington issued his farewell address to the Army near Princeton, New Jersey. In 1889, North Dakota and South Dakota became the 39th and 40th states with the signing of proclamations by President Benjamin Harrison. In 1917, British Foreign Secretary Arthur Balfour issued a declaration expressing support for a national home for the Jews in Palestine. In 1948, President Harry S. Truman surprised the experts by winning a narrow upset over Republican challenger Thomas E. Dewey. In 1963, South Vietnam President Nguyen Dinh Diem was assassinated in a military coup. In 1986, kidnappers in Lebanon released American hospital administrator David Jacobson after holding him for 17 months. In 1994, a jury in Pensacola, Florida, convicted Paul Hill of murder for the shotgun slayings of an abortion provider and his escort. Hill was executed in September 2003. In 2000, American astronaut Bill Shepard and two Russian cosmonauts, Yuri Gitsenko and Sergei Kurkovelev, became the first residents of the International Space Station. In 2003, in Iraq, insurgents shot down a Chinook helicopter carrying dozens of U.S. soldiers, killing 16. Also on this date, in Durham, New Hampshire, V. Gene Robinson was consecrated as the first openly gay bishop in the Episcopal Church. In 2004, President George W. Bush was elected to a second term as Republicans strengthened their grip on Congress. In 2016, ending a championship drought that had lasted since 1908, the Chicago Cubs won the World Series, defeating the Cleveland Indians 8-7 in extra innings at Progressive Field. 10 years ago, Republicans won control of the House of Representatives, picking up 63 seats in the midterm elections, while Democrats retained a majority in the Senate. Republican governors outnumbered Democrats after gaining 6 states. 5 years ago, President Barack Obama toured a drug rehabilitation center and met with former inmates in Newark, New Jersey, where he called on the nation to ensure those regaining their freedom got a second chance instead of a return ticket to prison. And 1 year ago, the Washington National fans lined the streets of the nation's capital for a parade to celebrate the city's first World Series victory since 1924. Looking at today's birthdays, we have singer Jay Black from Jay and the Americans. He is 82 years old today. Political commentator Patrick Buchanan is 82. Actor Stephanie Power, 78. Country rock singer-songwriter J.D. Souther is 75. Actor Peter Mulan is 61. Singer-songwriter Katie Lang, one of my faves, is 59. Actor Jenny Robertson from Bull Durham is 57. Let's see, actor David Schwimmer, as you know from Friends, is 54 years of age today. Jazz singer Kurt Elling is 53. Rock musician John Hampson from the group 90s is 49. Rhythm and blues singer Timothy Christian Riley from Tony Tone is 46. Rapper Nelly is 46, and actor Danny Cooksey is 45. Looking at the zodiac or the horoscope, for you Scorpios out there, assess partnerships. Align yourself with people who can help you grow mentally, emotionally, and financially. Learn from those with more experience and teach those trying to follow in your footsteps. If you're a Sagittarius, keep your life simple, stick to the truth, and question anything that doesn't seem right to you. Knowledge and information will be key when it comes time to make a professional decision. Capricorns, don't let confusion set in. Go directly to the source and find out all you need to know to make an informed decision. Someone you least expect will throw you under the bus if given a chance. For those Aquarius out there, you are in a position to wheel and deal. Look for bargains and be honest about what you want. A physical change will lift your spirits. Make exciting plans with a loved one. For Pisces, refuse to let your emotions take charge. Someone will use manipulative tactics to push you in a questionable direction. Don't give in to peer pressure or bullying. For all those Aries in our world, refuse to let anger take control and patience and understanding are required. Put moderation and thoughtfulness first. Romance is encouraged. Taurus, a change may be overdue, but before you take flight, work out all the small but essential details. Don't let a lack of communication lead to a misunderstanding. Geminis, the twins, pay closer attention to how you present yourself to others. Listen carefully and offer only what you can deliver. Be thoughtful, flexible, and receptive to others' ideas. For those cancers, before you implement your plans, be sure you have the approval necessary to avoid interference. Keep your money and passwords safe. Don't take risks with your health. Leos, the lion, have reliable people to work with, will make a world of difference, so cast a wide net for support. Be willing to compromise if it helps move a project along. Romance is featured. Virgo, my birth sign, a move someone makes will prompt you to lock into whether you should follow suit. You're beginning to look promising. Take charge or take care of unfinished business so you can start something with a clean slate. And finally, Libras, revisit an old idea. Consider what you will have to do to keep the peace while following a path that excites you. Seek expert help if you need it. Love will enhance your life. And as always, we say every single morning we read local news live after the horoscope. The horoscope is an entertainment feature not based on scientific fact. The funerals in the Acadiana area today include Ernest France Jr. at the Port Hudson National Cemetery in Zachary at 1 p.m., John A. Beer Sr., Saints Peter and Paul Catholic Church at 1 p.m., Mikhail Rollins, Evangeline Memorial Garden Chapel in Carencro at 1 p.m., Pat Tarver, First Baptist Church in Crowley at 3 p.m., and Ethel Verdreen at Evangeline Memorial Garden Chapel in Carencro at 3 p.m. Okay, getting back into the news. Officials predict turnout jump. Ballots may be tallied Wednesday by Sam Carlin, staff writer. After a record-setting early voting period that saw nearly 1 million people cast ballots in person or by mail, election officials in Louisiana are expecting the state could see the largest turnout in the presidential election in more than 2 decades. And despite a 132% increase in mail ballots for the 2020 election compared to the 2016 presidential contest, election administrators in East Baton Rouge, Jefferson, Orleans, and Lafayette parishes say they plan to have the mail ballots counted on election night. Those parishes have so far accounted for more than 36% of the mail ballots cast in Louisiana. Louisiana Secretary of State Kyle Ardoin is projecting a 69% to 71% turnout for the election in which the presidential contest between President Donald Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden tops the ballot. The high end of the range would make the 2020 election the highest turnout in Louisiana since 1996, according to statistics provided by Ardoin's office. In 2016, turnout was at 67.8%. In 1991, Louisianians turned out at an unheard of 78.7% rate to elect Edwards governor over former Ku Klux Klan leader David Duke. John Couvion, a political analyst who tracks voting statistics, projects Louisiana will likely see around 2.2 million votes cast when all is tallied. That would add up to 72% turnout. Democrats showed up in impressive numbers in the early voting period, Couvion said, and he expects Election Day to be marginally more conservative. Louisianians are not only voting for president. U.S. Senator Bill Cassidy, Republican, is defending his seat against a host of challenges, most notably Democratic Shreveport Mayor Adrian Perkins, who we mentioned in an earlier article. 5 of Louisiana's 6 congressmen are up for re-election, and the 5th district, held by the retiring U.S. Representative Ralph Abraham, is up for grabs. Also, along with local elections, East Baton Rouge Parish is electing a mayor-president, and Orleans Parish is choosing a new district attorney. Voters statewide will decide on 7 wordy constitutional amendments and a sports betting proposition. In East Baton Rouge Parish, the eye-popping surge in early votes points to an overall very high turnout in the contest, says Registrar of Voters Steve Rayborn. Nearly 100,000 have already cast ballots in the parish, double the early voting period from 2016. We think polling places are going to still be very busy on Election Day, Rayborn said. Poll workers will be wearing masks, sanitizing voting machines and pens between voters, and sit behind sneeze guards, Rayborn said. Voters are encouraged to wear masks but are not required. He expects turnout will exceed 70% in East Baton Rouge Parish. Across the country, election observers have suggested results could take longer than normal to report on Election Day because of the influx of mail ballots. In Louisiana, legislation passed during the recent special session allows election officials to start preparing mail ballots 4 days before Election Day. That involves tearing flaps and verifying signatures. On Election Day, the Board of Election Supervisors for each parish oversees the counting of those ballots, which in many parishes will begin earlier in the day than normal to account for the large number. Rayborn and other local officials said they have more staff on hand this time to count ballots. We do expect to be done on Election night, Rayborn said. I feel like we're a little bit better prepared because we can start the early verification process. I think we should be in pretty good shape. Mail ballots must be received by an election official by 4:30 p.m. Monday to count. Voters can track the ballots on Ardoin's website, where they'll be listed as pending until they are counted. Voters can hand deliver the ballots to registrar of voters, offices, or curbside drop-off location in parishes that have them. Emily Bird in New Orleans decided to vote by mail in all 3 Louisiana elections this year for health and safety reasons amid the pandemic. She and her husband dropped their ballots for the presidential contest in the mail on October 12th. Bird reported an issue with her ballot not showing up in the Secretary of State system to ProPublica's electronic election land project, but the issue was later resolved. A chronic voter, Bird said she intends to vote by mail in the future with lengthy ballots such as this one. Just the sheer volume of the November ballot, it took time to research all those different elements of the ballot, Bird said. Maybe a shorter one, I'd walk over to vote at John F. Kennedy High School, but otherwise, for the longer ballots, you need to do your research. In the New Orleans area, local clerks of court and state officials were scrambling to figure out if they would need to move polling places because of damage and power outages caused by Hurricane Zeta. Orleans Parish Clerk of Court Arthur Morrell said Thursday his office was surveying election infrastructure and scoping out possible mega precincts. He said his office would send out alerts as soon as possible to notify voters whose precinct changes and have staffers on hand at the site to notify them. In Calcasieu Parish, dozens of precincts are being consolidated into several mega precincts, including those at the Lake Charles Civic Center and Burton Coliseum. That's because a host of polling places were damaged or destroyed by Hurricanes Laura and Delta. Jefferson Parish Clerk of Court John Guggenheimer said that probably won't be necessary in Jefferson Parish, which was hit by Hurricane Zeta. The process for preparing mail ballots in Jefferson Parish was set to start Friday. The counting will likely start early in the afternoon Tuesday, Guggenheimer said, and there likely won't be any problems getting the count done that day. The statewide turnout at 71%, Guggenheimer said it will probably be at least that in Jefferson Parish. About 47,000 voters, an incredible amount, have already voted in Lafayette, said Louis Perret, Parish Clerk of Court. He hopes the parish will set a record for turnout pushing 80% when all is said and done. Normally, mail-in ballots total around 2,400, and the parish was at 11,000 and counting Thursday, he said. We are in unprecedented times of a voter turnout that we have never seen before. If this holds true, I believe we will set a record in Lafayette Parish, Perret said. Perret said the counting of mail-in ballots will start Tuesday morning, as opposed to the afternoon and a normal election. He expects to have the task completed on election night, even if it takes longer than normal. A minuscule number of ballots are rejected each year, he said, almost always because the voter didn't sign it, didn't put their mother's maiden name, or didn't have a witness signature. He also encouraged voters to download the Secretary of State's Go Vote app to look at their ballot beforehand and figure out their selections. Voters have up to 3 minutes in the booth, he said, unless they are disabled. Trump has rallied against the increase in mail ballots across the country, suggesting falsely they will bring fraud and that mail-in ballots filled out for him are being dumped in rivers or creeks. The Associated Press called that a fabrication. As for voter fraud, Perret noted unverified rumors start flying on social media in every major election, but given Louisiana's protocols, we won't be able to tell if someone tried to vote twice. Anytime you have human beings interacting with computers, I would freely admit mistakes are made, Perret said, but they are minuscule. Any type of vote fraud allegation, any type of Facebook posting from a non-election official should be viewed with great skepticism, and people should be patient before reacting. As Attorney General, Governor Spar study shows how much virus mandates matter by Andrea Gallo, staff writer. As Governor John Bel Edwards, Attorney General Jeff Landry, and the legislature duke it out over who has the authority to enact and to repeal coronavirus restrictions, Louisiana is in limbo. It likely will be up to the courts to sort out whether the state's coronavirus restrictions remain in place, as Edwards say they do, or whether they are on a 7-day break, as Landry says is happening. How much of a difference the court's rulings will make in how Louisiana approaches the virus, even if all restrictions are strict, is still up for debate. Leaders in East Baton Rouge, Ascension, New Orleans, and Jefferson parishes have all said they plan to keep coronavirus restrictions in place through local ordinances, with some saying they won't change them unless ordered to do so by a court. Lafayette has no local restrictions in place, though the city parish is still following the governor's orders for now. After 8 months of pandemic living, some Americans appear to be making their own decisions about how to deal with the virus, regardless of what political leaders tell them. The research so far suggests that the rules politicians impose and repeal are a factor, but hardly the only one, in the risk calculus that people use to decide how much to venture out. They are also likely to pay attention to other factors, such as news about the virus's recent trendline. A new report from Vanderbilt University in Tennessee, where coronavirus restrictions have been mostly lifted and new cases of surging, says as mobility patterns track community infection rates more closely than they track the imposition or expiration of official orders. People have kind of made up their minds about what they're going to do and how cautious they're going to be, said Dr. Tom Hallidish, a research scientist at the University of Florida, who has done modeling and forecasting for outbreaks there. After an April lockdown and a May reopening, Florida saw increased testing, a gradual increase in cases, and eventually a major increase in deaths, but the timeline suggests that Floridians were making their own decisions, not hanging on the governor's every word. Lawmakers passed a host of measures this summer here in Louisiana that shield businesses, restaurants, and others from coronavirus-related lawsuits. But those measures stipulate that businesses must comply with federal, state, and local regulations to qualify. Okay, let's move on. Health officials promote flu shots. Protection critical as pandemic continues, per Youssef Radad, staff writer. For weeks, state health leaders have warned of a potential to endemic of a bad flu season in tandem with the coronavirus outbreak in Louisiana, a combination that could prove especially deadly for the medically vulnerable. It's particularly important that the dual storm of influenza and the coronavirus-borne illness, COVID-19, be controlled for patients in nursing homes and others at risk of severe complications to avoid further deaths and strains on Louisiana's healthcare system. State health leaders says it's more important than ever for people who don't typically get flu shots to get them, especially those who care for the elderly or infirm. Life-threatening complications from the flu and COVID-19 are more common among older adults, especially those with underlying and chronic health problems. Though few people die from the flu, deaths linked to it are often the result of the virus worsening underlying health problems, and in some cases, the virus can lead to fatal heart attacks, strokes, or pneumonia. Dr. Frank Welch, the medical director for the Louisiana Department of Health's immunization program, said much is still unknown about the impacts both viruses can have on a person if contracted one after the other, or worse at the same time. And what we really don't know, and an experiment I really don't want to conduct, is what if someone got COVID and the flu in the same year, he said. That could put these people who are already at risk, or for one or the other, at a significantly higher risk of nasty complications from that. Louisiana suffered a particularly harsh flu season last year, which saw some 15,000 people hospitalized and an estimated 1,600 deaths between late August and early this summer, according to the State Department of Health. Nursing homes across the state have been ravaged by the coronavirus, which has seeped through protective measures long-term facilities instituted in March, including restricting visitors and requiring staff to wear PPE. Nearly all of the more than 270 long-term care facilities have reported that at least one case, and some have reported much higher outbreaks, according to state data analyzed by the Advocate. Many nursing homes have always struggled with infection control practices, and more than half the state's nursing homes have been cited for violations for those protocols, according to federal inspection reports. Only about 68% of people working in long-term personal care services reported getting flu shots last year. Since the flu and the coronavirus is spread from person to person and mainly through respiratory droplets, Welch said many of the social distancing measures, such as wearing a mask and physically distancing, could also blunt infections. He points to countries like Australia that reported one of the mildest flu seasons in recent memories and credited social distancing and a greater number of people getting flu shots. I certainly hope that happens in Louisiana, Welch said. Okay, and now we'll turn to sports. The best and worst: penalties, turnovers, sullied Cajuns' wild win over Bobcats. In an article entitled Timeout by Kevin Foote, staff writer and sports writer for The Advocate. Not only was it Halloween, but it was Halloween 2020. Perhaps that's the only explanation for the crazy, wacky, out-of-sync, unpredictable, wild, wild west version of Sun Belt football played in San Marcos Tuesday on Saturday. It was a kind of game where you could say the UOH Cajuns played their best game and worst game of the season all in the same night. If any game from the Billy Napier era at UL could be a candidate for a Twilight Zone episode, it was the Cajuns' 44-34 win over Texas State on Saturday. One thing about this group is they find a way to get it done, Napier said. It isn't always pretty. Some aspects of Saturday's win were beautiful. There was such highlight film plays like Braylon Trahan's interception that ended Texas State's first drive. Then there was Caleb Gossett's graceful 46-yard leaping touchdown grab after Eric Gayror's interception ended the Bobcats' second drive. Such statistics like Levi Lewis completing 22 of 32 passes for 332 yards and 2 scores and putting up 614 total yards, or the defense recording 3 sacks and 6 quarterback hurries were also sights from many UL fans' sore eyes. The problem with Saturday's game is those figures are counted by 4 turnovers and 11 penalties for 122 yards, giving Texas State 7 first downs. We're going to celebrate and enjoy this thing tonight, but I just walked out of that locker room, and I think the consensus among our team is there are a lot of areas where we can improve, Napier said. Really, I think everybody's sitting around thinking about how good we can be when we don't give the other team anything. We've got to make the other team earn it. The Cajuns hadn't lost a single fumble over the first 5 games. On this bizarre evening, they lost 3 and threw an interception. That's way too many for me, Napier said of the turnovers. That's all I can say about it. Then there were the special teams, with fumble to punt, allowed a fake field goal for a score, and created some bad field position with poor decisions on kickoff returns. We need to make better choices and decisions during the game, Napier said. We've got to fair catch the ball. We've got to communicate better. Too much bad ball for me. While games like this one put a coach like Napier in a peculiar position. Surely you want to be happy. It's a win, and ultimately that's the goal each week. And in this case, it's 9 wins and 10 road games over the past 2 seasons. There's also the process of charting progress in hopes of becoming a finishing product by December. I usually have a pretty short laundry list when the game's over, but I've got too many to list here, Napier said. I think it is coaching, I really do. We've got to have our players in the right frame of mind to go complete and play well, to go compete and play well. We didn't do that at times tonight. And it's not just Napier or some disgruntled fans shaking their heads after this one either. It's a win, but today we didn't do our best to our abilities. Sigarar, who had 2 interceptions and a tackle. There really wasn't a celebration because we didn't ball out. And upset as he was about all the mistakes made in Saturday's game, however, Napier can still see the big picture. I just think about what we could be if we put it all together, Napier said. That's what we've got to work really hard on as we get ready for another Sun Belt West opponent in Arkansas State coming to our place next week. Chances are no other game for the rest of the season will be like Saturday's affair. But no matter how ugly UL's costume was at times, Saturday ended up collecting more candy than the Bobcats. Just be happy Halloween only comes around once a year. It's now 56 a.m., so we are a minute past where our audio version of today's news broadcast, Local News Live, is cut off from our TV stations. But if you want to continue listening, I have one more sports story to talk about and then wrap it up. And you can listen to us on our Cypress Street Radio, which is our online streaming service. Just go to your web browser, punch in Cypress Street, that's CYPRESS Street Radio. Click on the play button, you can continue to listen to us, or go to our YouTube station, which is AOC Community Media. UL special teams endured the worst game of the season by Kevin Foote, staff writer, so continuing on the game that was played over the weekend. Special teams giveth, and they apparently taketh as well. For most of the season, UL special team units have flourished, first with 2 touchdowns in the road upset of Iowa State, and then another score and clutch punt in last Friday's win at UAB. On Saturday in San Marcos, Texas, however, the kicking game consistently let the Cajuns down. We had a few too many special team miscues in the game. UL coach Billy Napier said 2 punts that we didn't field well, and we tackled inside the 20 a couple of times on kickoff returns. The most obvious miscue came late in the first quarter, with UL leading 14-0 at the time. The Cajuns defense forced a 3-and-out from the Bobcats 12. Only the 53-yard punt touched the Cajuns player, and Texas State recovered at the UL 35. 5 plays later, Jamel Jeter's 1-yard touchdown run cut the lead in half at 14-7, and UL's early momentum was gone. The Cajuns would fumble the ball after a 32-yard catch by Chris Smith, and suddenly the Bobcats had routed off 21 unanswered points. The other issue for the special teams was an aggressive kickoff return team. One resulted in starting a drive at UL's 10. The next one resulted in Smith being dragged down at the 13. The Cajuns collected a total of 5 combined first downs on those 2 possessions, but the 4 poor field possession yielded no scoring threats. But we also gave them some short fields, Napier said. I think that's probably the thing I'm most disappointed in. Of course, the other memorable issue with the kicking game came on the end of Texas State's first touchdown drive. Initially, it appeared the Bobcats were attempting a 29-yard field goal, but instead place kicker Seth Keller perfectly executed a 12-yard fake field goal run to get Texas State on the board. The kicking game wasn't the only unusual aspect of UL's performance on Saturday. Entering play, the Cajuns had only been flagged 24 times for 233 yards over the first 5 games of the season. That wasn't the case in this wild affair. The Cajuns' secondary was flagged for 3 interference calls in the first half. Add to that a roughing the quarterback, and UL incredibly had 8 penalties for 87 yards in the first half. The Cajuns would finish the game with 11 for 122 yards, including 4 pass interference calls. We play tight man coverage like that every week, Napier said. This crew we had, they've called more DPIs than any other crew in the Sun Belt. We knew that coming in. We talked to the players about it, but it's a product of how we play. We've got to make better decisions. We've got to use the right technique, and we've got to play with more poise and more discipline. Okay, folks, so that about wraps it up. It's at 9:59. Our broadcast usually goes Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. Local News Live. This is a service brought to you by AOC, along with the collaboration of the Acadiana Advocate. We appreciate you tuning in and listening, and we try to reach our visually impaired audience out there in the Acadiana region, as well as those who don't have access to a newspaper or the news cycle. We do this with our volunteer reader staff. If you're interested in becoming a volunteer reader, you can go to aocinc.org, look at the volunteer tab on the homepage, pull it down, fill out the form to become a newspaper volunteer reader, and Miss Mandy will get in touch with you and set you up. Right now, all the volunteers are reading from their home studios, which obviously I am this morning, until we can get back into the podcast booth at the AOC studios, which who knows when that will be. But for now, we're able to broadcast as I have been for the last 7 or 8 months. Who knows? Time is a blur right now, that I've been doing this from my home studio. So it is possible, very, very possible to do it. So if you're interested, please go and fill out the form and join us. We'd appreciate it. Thank you again for tuning in. This is Bruce Cohen. As always, will always be Bruce Cohen. And as I always say, be safe, be healthy, and be smart, folks. Please be smart, especially tomorrow. I know it's optional to wear masks if you're going to go and vote in person, but wear your mask. What the heck, right? Wear your mask. Be smart about it. Social distance, keep it 6 feet apart in line. The poll workers will be making sure of that. And just be smart. Be smart out there, not just at the polls, but wherever you go, where you're not sure about the people that you're around, whether they've been tested positive or they have the virus or they're asymptomatic or whatever the situation may be, the virus is still out there and it's still causing people to die. So let's stop the spread, be smart, and one last thing, go out and vote. If you already haven't, go out and vote tomorrow. It is very, very important to exercise your right as an American citizen. Have a great day, be kind to each other, and we'll see you on the flip-flop.